Germany was eliminated on penalties by Paraguay in the round of 16. If you put it that way, it certainly appears to be an enormous surprise for everyone. In reality, this is only the final frame of a much longer story which began when Germany believed that they had discovered the magic formula for modern football. Now, the point is not that they lost to Paraguay. That can happen. The truth, however, is that over the last 12 years, Germany has been on a silent streak. Silent because, unlike us, they always go to the World Cup. But day after day, year after year, they have been slipping further and further away from world football. At the start of the Germany-Paraguay match, the commentator said something absurd. He said, "Today, Germany returns to a knockout stage match at a World Cup." How come we took up? The last time they were here, they won the World Cup. The reality is that for many national teams, this would simply be a journey of ups and downs. However, as far as Germany is concerned, in my opinion, it is clear that their competitive standing has collapsed and smoked. Because over the years, Germany, and I have remembered this since I was little, within the various World Cups or European Championships, had built a specific brand and a precise reputation. Whenever the summer arrived and there was a major competition, we knew that the presence of Germany changed the entire weight of the tournament draw. It happened that they had less brilliant squads or harbored a few too many doubts, but even when the talent of other national teams seemed brighter, Germany always brought home the certainty of reaching the very end. Yeah, they thrived within long matches, very often even during extra time or penalty shootouts. For years, Germany, at least to me as a child, gave me the feeling of being the absolute strongest team from the perspective of their nerves. Resistance, thin margins. Their Germany was having a field day. The opposite happened with Paraguay. The Germans were on edge. But the truth is that this story didn't start against Paraguay, but much earlier. On July 13, 2014, in Rio de Janeiro, Mario Götze controlled the ball from short with his chest and fired it left-footed past Romero. That goal decided the final against Lionel Messi's Argentina. A Messi who, after that World Cup, would say, "I'm thinking about retiring because the suffering was too much." But almost a decade later, Messi would go on to win the World Cup. And that goal that brought Germany to victory brought to a Klose project a package that is one of the most studied of the last 20 years. Well, that World Cup won by Germany was not won by chance. It was won because after the disaster of the 2000s, Germany had completely rebuilt its own football system from the very foundations. At Euro 2000, the German national team was old, slow, lacking in talent, and came out of that tournament very badly. They qualified by winning a group against Turkey, Finland, Northern Ireland, and Moldova, but once they got to the European Championship in Belgium and the Netherlands, they drew with Romania, lost to England 1-0 and then 3-0 against Sergio Canzio's Portugal, who scored a hat-trick. That Germany finished last in the group with just 1 point and went home with their tails between their legs. That's when the Federation realized that the problem was structural. Imagine that we haven't been to the World Cup for 3 World Cups in a row and we still haven't figured out how to deal with it. What did Germany do? They introduced obligations for professional clubs, an academy, federal centers, more widespread scouting, better trained coaches, an entire system built to avoid losing talent along the way, and from then on, the results came little by little. Clearly, at the 2002 World Cup, it still seemed too early. And yet, they won a group with Ireland, Cameroon, and Saudi Arabia, among other things, beating the latter 8-0 under the blows of Miroslav Klose, who scored in all 3 group games. They defeated Paraguay 1-0 on June 15, 2002 thanks to a late goal scored by Newell in the final minutes. They eliminated the United States in the quarterfinals with a goal from Ballack. In the semifinals, with another goal from Ballack, they knocked out South Korea, but had to surrender to Brazil in the final 0-2. Ronaldo, the phenomenon, scored twice. At that moment, however, Germany had the perception that things were going in the right direction. The 2004 European Championship was no different. They went out in a group with the Czech Republic, Holland, and Latvia without winning a single match. But that was a strange year, with Greece winning the final against Portugal and the Czech Republic coming in third. The first real confirmation came in the 2006 World Cup at home against a more courageous, lighter Germany. In that expedition, Germany, clearly as the host country, did not take part in the qualifiers, but there was the perception that they could go all the way and win despite their evolution. First, they won an intriguing group with Portugal, Ecuador, Poland, and Costa Rica winning all their games. Then, little by little, Germany, led by Klose and Podolski, advanced like a tennis player. 2-0 with a brace from Podolski against Sweden. A victory on penalties against Lionel Messi's Argentina with a goal from Klose, how you can make mistakes in regulation time. 3. Then, however, Italy arrived in the semifinals and would go on to win that World Cup. Germany finished the World Cup in 3rd place, but they knew they were still building. At Euro 2008, they drew a group with Austria, Poland, and Croatia and finished a 2nd. The real star was still Podolski, but the decisive goal against Austria was scored by Ballack. In the next round, they eliminated Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal 3-2. Then an intriguing Turkey, thanks to a goal from Lahm in the 90th minute, but in the final, they surrendered to Fernando Torres. Once again, Germany has completed a perfect tournament expedition at Euro 28, but they see the trophy ultimately heading in another direction. But the truth is that they were building. Having reached the World Cup 2010, there was no longer any doubt. Germany had to start winning, as well as convincing, as they were already doing. They first got through a group with Ghana, Australia, and Serbia. Then when the draw turned tennis-like, a super Müller led the Germans against England, winning 4-1. Winning 4? After scoring 4 goals against the English, they also scored 4 against Argentina. It was a humiliation. Argentina benched Diego Armando Maradona. Germany won 0-4. However, the fairy tale was interrupted once again in the semi-final, once again against Spain. With 15 minutes to go, Puyol gave the Iberians the victory that would lead them to lift the World Cup with Iniesta's goal in the final against the Netherlands. Germany had to settle for 3rd place for the umpteenth time against Uruguay. They had to work hard, but it was almost becoming a curse. At Euro 2012, the one in Poland and Ukraine, Germany got through a group with Portugal, and then Spain, Denmark, and Holland. The group is extremely difficult, a real group of death. But Germany has gone on to win every single match. Mario Gomez won the match against Portugal on his own, scored twice against Holland, and then Podolski and Bender secured a victory for the team against the Danes. In the knockout stage, Germany had a good draw against Greece, but they went on to concede 4 goals in that match. But once again, they must stop in the semifinals, facing the Italy of Mario Balotelli, who would go on to score a decisive brace against them. Germany once again arrives very close to winning that trophy. Also provided creativity, Klose held together the history, the penalty area, and intelligence. In 2014, everything fell into line. Because everything fell into line, because everything fell in place, because it fell into line, because everything fell into line, because it was the team of 2014. Neuer in goal, Lahm became the brains of the team. Schweinsteiger was the midfield heart, Kroos the playmaker, and Müller a unique interpreter. Özil added flair, Klose held the history. Özil provided imagination, while Klose held the history, the penalty area, and the intelligence together. In 2014, everything fell into line because Germany is ready. They have Bayern as an emotional and competitive bloc. They have players accustomed to the Champions League, a coach who has known the group for years now. They have a generation that is at the exact point of its maturity. But above all, they have clear roles. Lahm's who he is. Schweinsteiger knows what he has to do. Klose knows what he represents. Neuer spreads the field like a sweeper, effectively inventing a new way of playing goalkeeper. Kroos controls the tempo. Müller interprets the games without needing to have a fixed position. Hummels and Boateng defend behind, taking all the chestnuts out of the fire. That Germany was full of functions. Well, this is perhaps the first real difference in what we'll see later, because even today, Germany has important names. And even today, Germany has players who play for big clubs accustomed to the Champions League elite. They have excellent prospects, but then gradually they lose those functions that had made that group perfect. For example, after Lahm, they have not found a player, a captain with that mental cleanliness. After Schweinsteiger, they have not found a midfielder who combines technique, fighting spirit, and authority, especially when the bar was raised. But perhaps the most obvious example is the striker. After losing Miroslav Klose, they tried Werner Avers, Fulkrug, Voltmade. Each time a different solution to the problem, but the problem always remained the same. Look at Neuer. After losing Neuer, for years they carried with them the Perstian, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, but forced to live in the shadow of a monument, and even in this World Cup, he was overshadowed. When they lost the old Bayern Munich bloc, they lost the backbone of the national team. Because perhaps one of the great advantages was that Germany had many players who played together and always won. They spoke the same language, both the real one and the tactical one. Over time, that stuff wears thin. If we take Bayern Munich today, the defense is made up of Ta, who is certainly German, but it is also made up of Upamecano, who is French, or Kim, who is South Korean, Guerrero, who is Portuguese, Alphonso Davies, who is Canadian. Sure, there's Pavlovic, German, Kimmich, Musiala, but there's also Luis Dia, Olise, the first Colombian, the second French. Up front is Harry Kane. The only significant non-German players in Bayern Munich's 2006 campaign were Luio, who later left, Willy Sagnol, Dimitar Nicholas, and Roberto. In 2014, when Germany won the World Cup, the Bavarians possessed the true national team, and the only players who were not German were Ribéry, Alaba, Mandzukic, Pard, Rabam, and finally, Thiago Alcantara. But then they had Ghazi, Müller, Schweinsteiger, Kroos, Neuer, Philipp Lahm, Jerome Boateng, Bastian, and so on and so forth. In that World Cup, Germany were perfect, ready to destroy Ronaldo's Portugal 4-0 with a hat-trick from Müller and a goal from Hummels. Then they drew 2-2 with Ghana, thanks to goals from Klose and Ghazi, and then they won again with a narrow 1-0 win against the States thanks to Müller's goal. In the round of 16, they struggled more than expected. The match with Algeria was 0-0 for the entire time. Then Schürrle scored in extra time. In the 119th minute, Oil made it 2-0. The 2-1 goal in extra time was useless. Algeria was eliminated and Germany advanced in front of 43,000 people in Porto Alegre, but in Belo Horizonte, it was Mineiraço. Germany beat the host Brazil and won 7-1. Müller, Klose, Kroos scored 2, Khedira 2 from Schürrle, KD. At the end of the first half, they were already 0-5 down. That Germany was scary. In the final against Messi's Argentina, the match remained 0-0. Then Gose scored in the 112th minute. Germany had made it. They were world champions. They were no longer afraid of anyone. They had become the national team they wanted to be in the past. 2000. They did it 14 years later, but they did it with a perfect run. And so maybe we're there, right? Because do you know what this story teaches us? That we Italians should also learn a lot. Well, it teaches us that maybe when you get there, you have to figure out how to stay there, and Germany didn't do that. And in fact, at the 2016 European Championship, they kept the draws, they went on, and kept the draws, they went on, and clearly they were still paying. They got through the group with Poland, Northern Ireland, Ukraine without conceding a goal. But you could already see that something was wrong, but they scored just 3 goals in the entire group, but it didn't matter, they went through as first, and that's fine. In the round of 16, the draw was kind, they got Slovakia and won 3-0. In the quarterfinals, they faced an Italy team, let's say perhaps the worst in recent years that has ever participated in a final phase. The team of Antonio Conte, Zaza, Pele, Giaccherini, Parzata, Pele, Giaccherini, Parolo, Giglio, Darmian, all good players, but not the Italy of the 2000 Cup. That Germany drew 1-1 and then sensationally eliminated Italy on penalties. They reached the semi-finals against the host nation France where they lost 0-2 following a brace that was scored by Antoine Griezmann. But you know what? It was still the semi-finals, it was still the flow of that national team. This was the first deception. Euro 16 is remembered for Germany as if it were a decent tournament. World champion Germany loses to host nation France with Griezmann scoring a brace in a 2-0 victory for the French side in Marseille. France, who were also the favorites for that World Cup, looked at it from the outside like a perfectly normal defeat. But if we look back at that match today, we realize that there were already those problems that would become fundamental and central. Germany controlled the law. You can see, no, they held the field, but you can also see that they lost something after 2014. In the meantime, Miroslav Klose left the national team. Mario Gomez had come back in handy after a period of ups and downs. He had given the attack a new body. German, but against Italy in the quarterfinals, he gets hurt. Marco Reus is missing. Thomas Müller plays a very strange European Championship. He never scored, as if his world-class instincts have been extinguished in the very tournament where he was most needed. Klose on the pitch is very far from the guy who had decided the World Cup. Furthermore, Umel is disqualified. What can I say? He is out. Boateng stops during the semi-final. After that match, Joachim will say something important. He says losing 4 pillars is too much. And it makes you understand that you should also look for pillars for the future because the time would have come when you would have lost them all. He was right. It was a warning. Germany says, but he doesn't say it, he makes it clear, it is still strong enough to reach the semi-finals, but it is starting to depend heavily on some roles that the system was not replacing with the same quality. The problem after Klose was not just having the number 9, it was Germany's relationship with the penalty area. For years, Germany had strikers capable of giving. He played a significant role in the games, even when the game got dirty. Klose was the last great symbol of that tradition, not the most spectacular center forward in history, but a player who, whenever a cross arrived, knew exactly how to give it some real meaning. He was the one who reached the second balls, he was the one who unlocked deadlock matches. After him, Germany began to look for other ways, as I was saying earlier. Timo Werner gave you depth, but struggled against low blocks. Aversa had enormous class, but he wasn't a penalty box number 9. Müller was a unique player, but he worked better when he read the spaces around a more stable system and with another striker. Okrog arrived late at a very negative moment and brought back something old, but for years it almost seemed like an emergency solution. Well, Euro 2016 was like this. Germany still seemed great, but they lost the first piece of their old code. Then came 2017, which from my point of view was the most dangerous year of this whole story. You might say, wait a minute, but 2017, there was no European or World Cup. No, exactly, but it was the year in which Germany misinterpreted itself. In Russia, in preparation for the World Cup, the Confederations Cup was being played, by the way. The last edition, because from that moment on, it was being removed. I liked it a lot. The Confederations Cup, for those who don't know, is a competition that brings together the national team that won the World Cup, the one that won the European Championship, the one that won the Copa America, the Asian Cup, the South American Cup, the Central North American Cup, the Central North American Cup, and the Oceania Cup. A high-level tournament where Germany ended up in Group B with Chile, winner of the Copa America, Australia, winner of the Oceania Cup, and Cameroon, winner of the African Cup. The Germans did very well. The team that fielded the team was an experimental one. They won 3-2 on their debut with goals from Stindl, Draxler, and Goretzka. Then Stindl again scored the goal that allowed the team to equalize at a 3-1 with goals from Werner and Demirbay, also annihilates Cameroon. In the semi-final, Germany faces Mexico, a tough test but wins 4-1. In addition to Goretzka and Werner, Junes also scores. Do you remember him? In Naples, in the final, they face Chile again and again. Stindl scores the 3rd goal that will give him the award for top scorer of the tournament. Mutab, Germany's champion of the Confederations Cup. It's us again! That Germany over there is a laboratory on paper and the world champions are forced to stay at home. There is Draxler, captain, who will win the award for best player of the competition. Timo Werner, center forward. Leon Goretzka, who always comes in and scores. Stindl, who decides the final. Emre Chenny in the middle. Rudiger, a starter. Ter Stegen in goal instead of Neuer. That was supposed to be a test, and it became a trophy. Germany would have accepted to lose. Instead, they win. Everyone calls that national team the B team. But be careful because there's another thing to say here. Right at that time in Poland, the European Championship is being played under 21. And that 21 Germany had a golden generation. They were placed in a group with Italy, Denmark, and the Czech Republic. They won 2-0 on their debut with goals from Meyer and Gnabry, then 3-0 against Denmark with goals from Knaf, Selk, and Amiri. The only match they actually lost was the one against the Italian national team with a goal from Bernardeschi. Then Germany qualified for the semi-finals and beat England, a very competitive national team with war pros Abraham, Chilwell, and Redmond. Then in the final, Vassar's goal gave the trophy to the Germans against Spain, who also won that prestigious trophy that year. Now you might say, well, it's the under-21s. Yes, but it made you understand that Germany was strong, not only for having won the World Cup, but also for the B team, a laboratory national team that won the Confederations Cup, and then also in the under-21 national team that dominated youth football. It almost seems like a demonstration of industrial power. The experimental national team wins above, the under-21s win below. The world champions are still there. In fact, the spare parts lift the cups. Germany has built a perfect assembly line, but in reality, that is the great misstep of German football, because winning with the B team does not mean that one has built the new A team. I personally like Draxler quite a lot, but for as much as he seemed at that specific moment to be ready to become the new technical face of football, he will ultimately remain in large part an unfinished talent. Werner seems to be the new modern striker, fast, vertical, perfect for playing space football, but at the World Cup it will be understood how difficult it will be, and it will be difficult in all respects, to rely on him when you are facing teams that very often have close defenses. Thus, Goretzka partly takes on Schweinsteiger's legacy, but he will never have the same weight in the national team. Ha! Rudiger becomes a very high-level defender for his clubs, Chelsea and Real Madrid, but the German defense will go through years of total instability. He will be very strong for Stegen, but the goal will be prisoner of Manuel Neuer's control. And he still is. He retired today. At that time, Germany didn't make mistakes because they stopped producing players. They made mistakes because they confused players with the pillars. In 2017, Germany still saw many strong players and thought they already had the new pillars. A year later, at the 2018 World Cup, that belief exploded. The 2018 World Cup began before the first match. The real first choice that would later become symbolic of that World Cup was the exclusion of the hero Sané. Looking at this today, it seems to be much more important than it had appeared to be back in those days. Sané was coming off a crazy season at Guardiola's Manchester City. He was young, fast, destabilizing for opposing defenses, used to playing in a team that had just changed the rhythm of the Premier League Championship. He was one of the few German players with a quality that the national team sorely lacked the ability to break away. He was the player who would take your game and break it up, the one-on-one that forces the opponent to come out, the defenses to break in two, the one who changes your rhythm. Now, if we look back at that 2018 Germany team, there were so many really strong players in it. And that's precisely why the Germany needed Sané, because when a strong national team faces teams that are close, low, more careful, it's not enough to move the ball. You have to know that there's someone who changes the game for you. Löw chose Julian Brandt in his place. The newspapers described that decision as almost a photo finish, as if the coach had chosen one over the other at the last second. And in fact, be careful, because Brandt is not a bad footballer. On the contrary, he is technical, intelligent, and he is also more compatible with some of the coach's ideas. But the truth is that Germany chose integrity and not disruption. Now, it's not that expensive, nor would Germany have won the 2018 World Cup. It's not like that. But that stuff there is a warning sign, a wake-up call. What we can say is that Germany is still thinking about its structure, but hasn't figured out how to evolve. And when Germany arrives in Russia, where they had won the Confederations Cup, they realized that the system has become much more fragile than it seemed. The Germans are placed in Group F with South Korea, Mexico, and Sweden. In their debut, they play against Mexico with the usual 4-2-3-1. Neuer in goal, Kimmich on one side, and Platnart on the other. Hummels and Boateng in the center, Kroos, and what else can I say in the midfield? Özil between the lines, Müller and Draxler next to Werner. Reading the names, it looks like an all-star. On the pitch, however, Mexico immediately understands what Germany's flaw is. Kimmich moves up, Platnart moves up. Germany brings many men into the opponent's half. Kroos should manage the first build-up. Özil receives between the lines. Werner attacks the depth of the enemy. It's a system that is designed to crush the opponent. What does Mexico do? They use that same pressure against Germany. On Carlos Osorio prepares a precise game. Carlos Vela moves between the lines. Chicharito remains ready to attack the space. Irving Lozano starts wide and waits for the right moment. Mexico does not want to argue with Germany for possession. They try to hit Germany where Germany empties, and they always do it in the same way. Recovery, first clean pass, attack in the space behind Kimmich. This is the tactical scene of the match. Germany has the ball, but Mexico has the way. Every time the German possession loses quality, the team stretches, Kroos and Khedira are exposed, the fullbacks are high. Hummels and Boateng have to defend, but they have enormous meters behind them and run backwards. Here, Lozano's goal is almost a manifesto. Mexico recovers, starts again, Chicharito carries the ball and serves Lozano. The German defense is forced to run backwards. Özil chases his opponent into the area as the last man of luck. Lozano comes back and scores. It is a very simple goal, but only an appearance in reality. It is a bit of an x-ray of the system. Germany wanted to control the ball, but lost control of the spaces. The match ended 1-0 and many spoke of surprise, disappointment, but in reality, it was only the beginning. It was nothing coincidental. The second match against Sweden followed the usual German script. Germany suffered, went behind, but stayed in the game. Equalized with Royce, and then crossed in the 95th minute, scoring the 2-1 goal. Germany was still there. Just 1 point, and they would probably advance. The last match was with South Korea, little South Korea. The Asians pushed forward, accumulated possession, and filled the opponent's half. Germany had the ball, but struggled to find space. First continued to cross, but he was always far from where he should have made an impact. Khedira was physically drained compared to the player he was in 2014. Müller started from the bench, Özil was thrown back in, but he became the symbol of a team that played the ball and never hurt anyone. Corner, as I was saying, moves around, attacks the spaces, but finds nothing. And then the unthinkable happens. In the 93rd minute, Kim Jong scores the goal to give South Korea the lead. Germany throws itself forward, Neuer even goes to the other side but leaves an empty net, and Son Evans scores the 2-0 in the 96th minute. Germany finished at the bottom of the group and has been eliminated alongside South Korea. It is clear to everyone that a change is necessary, and a transformation could start with Joachim. So in 2018, we have 4 real problems. The first is tactical. Germany defends transitions poorly because they push many men forward and don't protect the center very well. 2. Athleticism. Some of the pillars of 2014 are less brilliant, more tired. The coach wants them to still be the same as they were in 2014, but they are not anymore. The third is technical. They have a lot of possession, but never in the decisive areas. The fourth is selection. The national team has many good profiles, but few irreplaceable roles. After such a failure, perhaps the Federation has to choose. It has to give it a new identity, it has to change, or it can try to correct without changing. Germany does this. Joachim stays. And that's what officially starts the decline of Germany. When a cycle ends, you can choose to accept the pain or try to prolong the past, all the while hoping that in some way it will start to function again. Germany chooses to stay a bit in the middle. Joachim remains the coach, which is an understandable decision, given the weight of his history, because he is not just any coach, he is the man of the 2014 World Cup, the one who accompanied the technical transformation of the national team, the man who took over the national team, after 2006, creating a laboratory until the summit in Rio. But this makes everything more complicated. He is both the father of success, but also the guardian of a world that is ending. He won with that generation, he saw it mature, he saw it dominate, now it should be up to him to dismantle it. And this is a very difficult position for coaches. Look at Marcello Lippi in 2010 with Italy. In 2019, the most important decision came. Löw spoke with Müller, Hummels, and Boateng and told them that they would no longer be part of the technical project. There are 3 huge names that are leaving. Müller was one of the most fundamental players in modern German football. A striker capable of living in space like few others. Hummels must have been the thinking defender, the one with the long ball, with the reading of the game, Boateng, the physical, fast, dominant center-back, essential in the high and aggressive Germany of 2014, but cutting them could have also made sense. Germany were coming off a disastrous World Cup, they needed fresh air, they had to make room for Süle, Rudiger, Ginter, Taka, Kirchherio, Autori, who were supposed to build the back of that Germany. The problem is the way in which that cut is interpreted on the pitch, because the generational cut only works if there's new architecture already behind it. If you remove 3 pillars, you need to know which ones you are putting into place now. That is, you need to have already technical hierarchy, a new leadership, a new defense sensor. Germany does not have a present, but cuts out the past, and from then on begins the construction site, changing the defense, the formations, the references. Sometimes Germany seems to want to return to vertical football, other times to controlled possession. Sometimes they look for young players, other times they rely on experts. Kimmich is moved. Goretzka grows at Bayern, but in the national team he never becomes a stable authority. Horner always remains at the center of 1,000 discussions. Avers is used as a false 9. Gnabry, who you will remember in the under-21s, alternates moments of champion with Fazio Paci. In the meantime, the problem of the center-forward remains the stain that does not go away after Klose. Germany still has not found a striker, and so Euro 2020 arrives. Germany qualified as first in a group with the Netherlands, Northern Ireland, Belarus, and Estonia. He dominated that group with the goals of Sané, Gnabry, with the brains of Royce, with the experience of Kroos, with Werner, with Gundogan. Gnabry is even the top scorer for that team, having netted a total of 8 goals. And yet something absurd happened. Euro 2020 played in 2021. Joachim recalled Hummels and Müller. 3 years earlier, they had been shown the door to build the future. 3 years later, they are still the present. Now, this choice is not a step backwards, but is truly an admission that one has indeed failed. Germany had tried to cut, but they were unable to replace them. Now, we have to admit one thing. In that European Championship, Germany drew a very difficult group with France, Portugal, and Hungary with him. They would lose against France because of Hummels' own goal, but they would win 4-2 against Portugal. The 2-2 on the final day, reached 5 minutes from the end by Goretzka against Hungary, will allow the team to move forward in the tournament. Forward, but not too far. At the first real hurdle, they lost 2-0 in London against the host England with goals from Sterling and Kane and said goodbye to that European Championship. And England would go all the way to the final and lose to Italy on penalties. That was a strong England side, Southgate side, cautious, compact, patient, who didn't want an epic match. They wanted to win and control it. Now, in my opinion, there is the image that truly closes the Joachim era. Müller runs towards the goal, presents himself in front of Pickford when he gets the equalizer but shoots wide. There, years before, that Germany would have drawn that match. Sure, it was a technical error, Löw couldn't do anything. Perhaps it was the most obvious example. At the end of the European Championship, Löw said goodbye after 15 years, and the truth is that if he had left even 2 or 3 years earlier, there would have been a lot of talk about it, but instead he left quietly. Because that Germany continued to drag itself along. After the W, Flick came, perhaps the most logical choice. He knows the national team, he was Löw's assistant, he knows many players, he has just had an extraordinary period at Bayern Munich in 2020 that Bayern Munich had won everything. Flick's Bayern Munich works automatically with Lewandowski up front, on top, Müller behind him, Kim Goretzka, Davis, Pavard, Alaba, Boateng, Neuer, Gnabry, Coman, Sané. But transferring him to the national team is much more complicated because the national team doesn't train every day, and then Germany still has the problem of a center forward. Qatar 2022 arrives. Neuer in goal, Rudiger, Sule, Slaughterback, Raum, Kimmich and Gundogan in midfield, Musiala, Gnabry, Müller and others, and then also Sané, Füllkrug, Goretzka. The names are there, the structure much less so. For Germany, which ends up in a group with Costa Rica, Japan, and Spain, it is still a poor showing. They lost their debut 2-1 against the Japanese with goals from Don Asano turning the game around in 10 minutes. Then they drew with Spain in the second match, with Füllkrug equalizing 5 minutes from the end. In the last match against Costa Rica, they struggled a lot, going down 2-1. Then Herrera scored the equalizer 50 minutes from the end, the same player who would score the 3-2 goal 5 minutes from the end, and Fulk put the exclamation point on the scoreboard, making it 4-2. But on the other pitch, Japan beat Spain, advanced to first place, and eliminate Germany. For the second year in a row, Germany was eliminated in the group stage of the World Cup. Germany, which in 2014 seemed like a laboratory country, looked at another laboratory, Japan, which in that World Cup first beat Germany and then Spain. They had reading changes, hunger, management, ideas, and movement, while Germany no longer had any of that. After Qatar, Flick was still there. Germany must necessarily prepare for Euro 2024, which they will play at home, but there is complete chaos nonetheless. Germany loses all the friendlies. In September 2020, Germany faces Japan in a friendly. They punish it, even win 1-0, and that's when Flick ends up. The Federation sacks him, and it is a historic decision because the German national team was not used to treating the role of technical assistant the way a club treats a coach after a series of negative results. There is a cycle, things move forward, but instead that defeat is too symbolic. At this point, the choice falls on Nagelsmann. And Nagelsmann arrives at a strange time, because Nagelsmann has to play in a European Championship at home, but he arrives with a national team that no longer believes in itself. The truth is that the country and Germany have always had an almost institutional relationship with the national team. It was not about support, it was about identification. For years, the German national team had been the place where a country recognized itself. Organization, seriousness, continuity, the ability to arrive early and prepared for events and hammerheads. Then something changes, the relationship changes. Germany no longer looks at its national team with the certainty it once did. And Nagelsmann has to rebuild in a few months, what a national team usually rebuilds over the years. So what does Nagelsmann do? He immediately removes the noise. He calls Kroos back. Kroos had left the national team after the 2021 European Championship. Returning to the national team at 34 means giving a fundamental demonstration of who you want the cornerstones to be. Kroos no longer runs like he used to. He is no longer a box-to-box player, but he helps you because the team knows where to start and who to talk to. Alongside him, Nagelsmann builds a readable Germany. Andrew becomes his rough, more physical complement, useful for protecting. Rudiger and T form a stable central pairing. Mittel has been a natural solution on the left. Kimmich is finally brought back in his original role. Aversa is the associative center forward with Füllkrug ready to come off the bench. But the real faces of this Germany for Nagelsmann are Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala. Musiala and Wirtz are being used precisely as the symbol of the new era of German football. Musiala is dribbling, slaloming, an elastic body, direct playmaking. He has an almost anti-industrial talent because he seems to be born from the purest instinct. Force is reading, final passing, intelligence between the lines. Together, they give Germany the feeling of having found two players capable of moving the ball around. And at Euro 2024, that is what happened. Germany started with Scotland and won 5-1. Musiala, Avers, Füllkrug, and Emrian all scored. Even Rudiger hit the wrong goal. Musi and Gundogan were the scorers in the second match in Stuttgart, where Geremia won 2-0 against Hungary, then a 1-1 draw against Switzerland, with Füllkrug scoring in the last minute, which brought the Germans to first place, avoiding Italy and putting them in an easier part of the draw. In fact, Germany also beat Denmark 2-0 with goals from Avers and Musiala. Now, we're in the quarterfinals, Spain are coming up, and this isn't just a game, it's a clash between two models and the models. On one side, there's Germany, who are trying to find themselves with crosses that represent their old greatness and the new generation. On the other, Spain, who have entered their future. Rodri, Pedri, Dani Olmo, Nico Williams, Lam and Yamal, a young team but with a very clear identity. Spain pushes forward with Dani Olmo, Germany pushes, looks for Füllkrug and gets back in it with Florian Wirtz 1 minute from the end. And that's the moment that could perhaps be the turning point in our history because he scores and keeps Germany going. He's the face of that team. At that point, the tension can be cut with a teaspoon, as they say. There's even a debate about a possible handball by Cucurella. Then 1 minute from the penalty shootout, Michel Merino scores with a header. Spain 2, Germany 1. The end. However, Euro 2024 is not a failure like 2018 or 2022. It is a tournament in which Germany seems to have become a great team again, and in the meantime, German football the problem. It keeps Nagelsmann, obviously, but it also changes the youth competitions. The old Bundesliga under 19 and under 17 are being replaced by the new DFB youth leagues. It is a reform that aims to change the path of young people, increase the level of competition, and promote industrial development, and give more meaningful matches to kids. It is a technical detail, but very, very important. Because when a federation changes the way it organizes youth football, it is saying that the previous model is no longer correct. It is not throwing everything away, but is building. The truth now is that Germany, unlike Italy, has not ceased its production activities, nor has it stopped working. It has continued to work, but has not found such key players anymore. Euro 2024 seems like the beginning of the cure, but the 2026 World Cup, which was supposed to be the confirmation, calls everything into question. Germany enters this World Cup in a very different situation compared to 2022. It is no longer a team in disarray. Nagelsmann has given an idea. The group has more enthusiasm. Musiala and Wirtz are now international stars. Havertz is more mature. Rudiger still carries great weight. Kimmich has experience. Füllkrug and Wirtz provide different attacking solutions. And Germany ultimately wins its entire group. Oof. It comes first in a group with Ivory Coast, Ecuador, and Curaçao. Never convincing piano, but scoring 7 goals in Curaçao and only losing the last game when it was already mathematically qualified as first. But above all, it seems a more complete Germany. The 2 goals by Undab that turned the Ivory Coast's fortunes around between the 68th and 94th minutes show you that you have also signed another striker, and above all, Celerello in Sané. But then, Paraguay comes along, and perhaps you can already smell the stench. Because if Germany had advanced and lost to Mbappe's France, you could say you lost to a stronger national team. You would have done the same with Argentina, Brazil, Spain. Paraguay takes away all your ways out, and shows you how to say, let me see that you've grown up. It becomes a rough block game, full of friction. Germany has a lot of balls, but can't score. Paraguay drops back, resists, fights, plays dirty, all kinds of rhythm. They accept living without possession and taking the game into suffering, into nerves. Germany won on nerves. Paraguay even goes ahead with a bang. Avers equalizes. Germany racks up the shots and even scores with Jonathan Tah in extra time, but the goal is disallowed by the VAR intervention. Just think about fate. T scores and Jose Canale misses. It goes to penalties. Avers misses. Waltmate misses. The decisive penalty, however, was missed by T. Neuer, after Neuer had kept Germany alive with a save. Orlando Gil saved, then the ball landed at the feet of the player who had lost at the moment of the goal. Jose Canale scored, and it was a goal. For the first time in its history, Germany lost a penalty kick in a World Cup, and here the circle came full circle. In 2014, Germany had talent and leadership. In the years that followed, they had Werner but not Klose, they had Goretzka and Kimmich but not Schweinsteiger and Lahm. They had Rudiger, Schule, Tarbach, but not that defense. They had Avers, Gnabry, Nis, Vers, so many enormous talents. They had Flick, Nagelsmann, but football had changed and they were unable to adapt. France has multiplied its own talent both physically and technically, while Spain has successfully rebuilt its own new generation. Wow. England transformed everything. Portugal has produced an industrial quantity of players, and Japan has effectively become the new version of Germany. Germany is still a great national team, it still has great players, and it certainly has great players, and it certainly has a bright future. It still has Musiala Wirtz, for example. But to return, it will have to stop chasing 2014. Perhaps it will have to do exactly what it did in 2000. It will have to build a new idea of itself, not a copy of the Germany of Lahm and Schweinsteiger, not a nostalgic version of Miroslav, Klose's team, and not a national team that says, well, I'm modern because I have technical players. Well, I have technical players. A new Germany capable of uniting what the system has lost in recent years, namely leadership, competitive nastiness, and courage. In 2014, Germany had succeeded. They had managed to win that World Cup. In 2026 against Paraguay on penalties, it discovered how distant that feeling is, and perhaps this is precisely where that Germany must start again, because today it has become irrelevant.